Hi there. My name is Aaron Lanterman. I'm a professor of electrical and computer engineering at Georgia Tech, and in the last lecture of ECE3400 analog electronics, we studied the common emitter amplifier. Here, we will take a look at common collector amplifiers, also known as emitter followers. In the next lecture, we'll look at common base amplifiers. As usual, we'll conduct our studies using a set of Thevenin and Norton equivalents developed by Professor Marshall Leach, and you can find these equivalents summarized on his BJT formula sheet. We derived these equivalent circuits in some previous lectures. So, here's a simple setup for a common collector amplifier as it's usually implemented, with one little tweak. I've included a collector resistor up here just because it's easy to do, but you should know that most common collector amplifiers don't have a resistor here, so you can take all of our formulas and just set RC equal to 0 in them. So we have two capacitors here that are acting as DC blocks. Like the common emitter example we looked at last time, we're using a voltage divider consisting of two resistors to help provide the bias. I'm including this RS here. This is not part of the amplifier itself. This is representing the output impedance of the source that's driving the amplifier. And similarly, I have an RL here that's representing an external load that is also not part of the amplifier itself. It's this mess in here that's considered to be the amplifier. So, as usual, we'll consider this to have two aspects. One is the DC bias circuit, and the other is the small signal, or you'll also hear people say AC circuit. So, in the AC circuit, these DC power supplies look like what we will call AC ground. Now, a lot of textbooks will take these kinds of resistors and flip them to be facing downward, and that helps you quickly see parallel combinations, like they'll write R1 here next to R2 instead of having R1 there. I prefer to write things like this because it helps me remember where things came from as we're analyzing it. I can see why people like to have things flipped around to go the other direction, because then all the resistors kind of line up and it makes the schematics kind of compact for something like a textbook. But Marshall Leach likes to draw things this way in his notes, and I became accustomed to that style. I hope you'll like it too. So in the DC circuit, we open up the capacitors, and in the AC circuit, we short the capacitors. Now, this is a highly simplified analysis. In later lectures, I'll show you how to treat these capacitors more carefully so we can study their effect on the frequency response. So, something you might notice about the DC bias circuit is it looks exactly the same as what we had for the common emitter amplifier with this kind of voltage divider bias. So we can use all of the same formulas to find the collector current, and then you could use your alpha and beta relations to find the emitter and base current as you wish. The main thing that I would note here is that RC is usually 0 in a common collector amplifier, although RC doesn't play a role in the bias equation anyway. RC does play a role in the kind of computation you might do to make sure you're operating in the active mode. Again, this is exactly like we saw last time, but one fundamental difference again is that RC is usually 0, in which case this VCB relationship can be considered to be automatically satisfied. You can tell that VCB has to be bigger than 0. And this relationship confirms that we're operating in the active mode, because everything we're doing assumes that we're in the active mode. All right, so once you've computed the bias currents, you can plug them into the formulas and compute the raw input and output resistance of the BJT. You can compute this raw emitter resistance, and you can compute its raw transconductance gain. And then we'll take those parameters and shove them into the formulas we derive later. So I'm going to solve for the gain by using our Thevenin equivalent circuit we compute looking up into the emitter of the small signal model. For that, we need to compute the Thevenin equivalent looking out of the base. It turns out that we don't really need any sort of equivalence looking up on the collector side. And in fact, you'll see that RC doesn't appear in any of the formulas that we will derive in later slides. All right, so replacing everything to the left of the BJT here with a Thevenin equivalent circuit, we find that VTB is equal to Vs times an expression from a voltage divider. So we have R1 in parallel with R2, and that plus Rs goes in the denominator. And then we have R1 in parallel R2, since that's what we're dividing the voltage over. So this is exactly the same as we saw in the previous lecture. Now, as far as RTB goes, well, to compute a Thevenin equivalent resistance looking out of the base here, I would zero out the independent source, and now I just have these three resistances in parallel. And again, this is the same as the result we had in the common emitter amplifier lecture. Okay, so I'm going to take all of this stuff and replace it with a Thevenin equivalent. And that Thevenin equivalent has a voltage VTB and a resistance RIE that I'll give the formula for again in a second. So I can compute the output voltage here in terms of this Thevenin equivalent voltage looking out the base using just a voltage divider. I have a parallel combination of RE and RL, and so I write that plus RIE in the denominator, and then I write RE in parallel with RL in the numerator. Now, what's VTB? Well, that we've seen several times. That's just this voltage divider associated with our source voltage. Now, before we go further, let's remind ourselves of what RIE is. We saw in previous lectures we could write that as two different ways. One of them involves R pi and one involves RE, and you can pick whichever one is most convenient. A little bit later, we'll see that this version that has RE has a nice interpretation. And let's also remind ourselves what RTB is. That's this parallel combination of resistances at the input. That's going to become important in a second. So I can now pile these relationships up here together and write VO equals Vs times the initial divider at the input times the divider here at the output. So it's the combination of two voltage divisions. So let's divide both sides of this expression by Vs in order to write an expression for the voltage gain AV. Again, that's just the multiplication of these two voltage division expressions. And we now have a fairly simple Mason flow graph. So we're going from our source to our Thevenin equivalent voltage looking out of the base to our actual output. So we're just going from voltage to voltage to voltage and not really looking at currents along the way. And to go from each voltage, we just have some voltage divisions. Now, you don't really need to draw a Mason flow graph like this. Sometimes it's convenient to think about the computations that way instead of writing down a bunch of equations. You can sort of start where you want to get to and then work your way backwards in terms of what variables you need. Or you can go the other direction and sort of plot out the chain of variables and then figure out what factors you need to put here. The main thing I want to do here is just get you used to the idea of Mason flow graphs because they're going to be super handy later when we deal with feedback amplifiers. All right, so that's the gain. What about the output impedance? So we're going to define the output impedance looking into the junction of RE with the emitter of the BJT, but not including RL. That's considered not part of the amplifier. So what we'll do is we'll once again use our Thevenin equivalent looking up into the emitter. And now since we're computing an equivalent resistance, what we need to do is we need to zero out the independent voltage source. And I just have a parallel combination of RIE and RE. So let's remind ourselves of what RIE is. There's two different expressions that come in handy. I think it's a little more natural to think about RE here. But in any case, something that I want to point out is that RTB has RS in it. So RIE has RTB in it, So the output impedance of this amplifier depends on the source resistance of what's driving it. We saw the same thing with the common emitter amplifier. The output impedance depends on the impedance of the source that's driving the amplifier. And I think that's an aspect of BJT-based amplifiers that isn't widely appreciated. Okay, so what about the input impedance? So we'll compute the equivalent resistance seen looking into the base and this biasing network here, but we're not including RS in this input impedance calculation. RS is not considered part of the amplifier. It's part of the source that's driving the amplifier. All right, since we're looking into the base, we'll use our Thevenin equivalent circuit looking into the base. And in general, there would be a voltage source here, but we don't have any voltage sources down here at the emitter, so we don't. All right, so then we just have this resistance RIB, and then our input resistance is just this parallel combination of R1, R2, and RIB. So what is RIB? Remember, that's R pi plus 1 plus beta RTE. That's one possible way to write it. It's probably the most natural kind. And RTE here is just this parallel combination of the emitter resistor and our load resistance. So, something that's different than what we saw with the common emitter amplifier is that the input impedance of the common emitter amplifier didn't have the load in it. So, here it does have the load in it. So the input impedance of the common collector amplifier depends on the input impedance of whatever the amplifier is driving. Again, that's one of these aspects of BJT-based amplifiers that I don't think is widely appreciated. But notice there is this difference between the common collector and the common emitter amplifiers. The common emitter amplifier we looked at didn't suffer from this. Now, this formula here is a bit of a handful. Let's consider some special cases. So here I have the gain and the input and output impedance formulas. And just for reference, let me write down the expressions for RIB, RIE, and this is all in terms of RTB. And remember, RTE is really RE in parallel with RL. All right. Let's first consider the case where the load resistance is infinite, so RTE is really just RE. That just makes our notation a little bit more compact. And let's also assume that our source resistance is 0. So if the source resistance is 0, this term goes away, and this entire factor here goes to 1. And then our gain is just our emitter resistance over the emitter resistance plus the intrinsic emitter resistance of the BJT, because RIE simplifies to RE if RTB is equal to 0, which it will be because RS equals 0 under this assumption. And since RIE and RE are the same, ROut is just RE in parallel with RE. Okay, that wasn't very helpful. It was little re in parallel with capital RE. All right. So let's also assume that our capital RE, the resistor we've chosen, is a lot bigger than little re, the intrinsic emitter resistance of the BJT. Well, if that's the case, AV is approximately 1, and Rout is just our raw emitter resistance of the BJT. So hopefully this is a pretty small number, which makes this a nice voltage source. And then the fact that this is approximately equal to 1 means that this is making a very good voltage buffer. So this is referred to as an emitter follower. And actually what I just said isn't quite totally complete. To be a good voltage buffer, you also have to have a really high input impedance. So if this 1 plus beta times RTE term is big, either because you've picked a big RE or you have a good transistor and beta is really big. And to clarify what I mean by for large is that this term needs to be big enough so that when you compute RIB, it's a really, really big number compared to R1 in parallel with R2. So your input impedance is just R1 in parallel with R2, and that's something you have control over. Now, the calculation for the gain that I just showed you is focused on the emitter, and I think that's the most natural solution to computing the gain, but it's not the only one. If you wanted, you could say, well, remember we did all of this analysis on the collector side when we looked at the common emitter amplifier, and maybe we could leverage something from that experience. So if we know what the emitter current is, and actually I don't have it on here, so let me draw that in. So let me draw in a little arrow with an IE here. There you go. Anyway, if we know what the emitter current is, we can multiply it by this parallel combination of RE and RL to get the output voltage. And to make our lives easy here, let me just go ahead and assume that R0 equals 0 for all the calculations we're going to do. We usually only assume that R0 is less than infinite when we're computing equivalent resistances looking into the collector, but we're not really needing that here. Anyway, with this assumption, we can just write IE equals IC divided by alpha. So there's a relationship between our emitter current and our collector current. And again, this R0 equals infinite approximation is what lets us get away with not worrying about primes here. And to figure out the collector current, let's use our Norton equivalent circuit seen looking into the collector. Because I've really aggressively applied this R0 equals infinite approximation, we don't have an R sitting out here, so we don't need to worry about that. Now, we can compute IC as being capital GM times VTB. VTB is just the result of this voltage division that we've seen 1,000 times already. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but we've seen it a lot. And now I can pile these expressions together and write this expression for the output voltage. So let's divide both sides of this expression by Vs in order to write the small signal voltage gain AV as this big mess here. And you can see why this is a conceptually more awkward solution when you look at the flow graph. Our original emitter-focused solution just went from voltage to voltage to voltage. Here we have to move into current land for a bit before we move back. So the initial step is the same, and then we have to go into current land through GM. We have to convert the current with alpha, and then we have to convert the current back into a voltage using the resistances. So this is a little more awkward. Now we have 5 different formulas for GM. I think the one that's most convenient here is this formula in terms of RE. And if you do a little bit of algebra and substitute this into here, you can show that the solution does in fact equal the original solution for the gain that we found. It's just a little bit more roundabout. Now, if you wanted, you could make a third solution for the gain. Imagine that we wanted a solution that was focused on thinking about the base. You could say, okay, well, in that case, our emitter current would be IB, and instead of dividing by alpha, you would have something like 1 plus beta sitting here, and then you would use the Thevenin equivalent circuit looking into the base in order to figure out what IB is. I'm not going to do that because this is already getting kind of boring, but that would make an interesting exercise for the viewer.